Welcome to week 6. We are looking this week at No Exit by Sartre. And as you have probably already seen in the discussion question this week, we are pointing out that, we used Camus' book, The Plague, to talk about existentialism, and now we're using a Sartre play, No Exit, to talk about the absurd. Um, why are we doing that, right? What's the point here? Well, I think it's because we do see relationships forming between both of these philosophies, as we talked about a little bit, right, in the past couple of weeks. There is some crossover, right, between these theories, between these ideas that um, responsibility is important. You will forever be responsible for things that you do, but that also, that despair can only be combated if we decide to make meaning in our own lives, right? And so, what are we doing with absurdism in, right, a play that is definitely about responsibility, right? We look at No Exit and we look at Sartre and his philosophy in No Exit does seem to be pretty existential, and absolutely it is, right? We certainly wouldn't disagree with that. That for Sartre, placing these individuals before their responsibilities is sort of the whole point. Seeing that they have gone to hell, not necessarily for their not directly for some of the actions they think they've gone to hell for, right? For example, we know that Garcon, believes he's been sent to hell because he abused his wife, right, emotionally and possibly physically, right? We don't really know what type of abuse, but any abuse is bad, and he certainly seems to believe that what he has done merits hell, so it must be pretty bad, right? And Ines believes that she's there because of her relationship as a lesbian, and so what we see, right? Estelle believes that she's there because she caused somebody to die, caused suicide, right? Of a lover. Uh, all that said, right? What Sartre seems to suggest in this play, right, is that they're all there for very different reasons, right? They're there because they refused to take responsibility for the things that they did. They refused to accept kind of who they were as people and ended up, acting, in ways that were inexcusable, right? And the inexcusable things were not the things we might think of, but they were the fact they didn't take responsibility for their actions, right? And they operated in bad faith. Now, correct? Sure. Yeah, I think that is correct. However, I think that we can also look at this as somewhat absurd because we are arriving in a place, right, first of all, where our reality, right, is very different from the reality that we had assumed, right? Everybody believes when they get to hell that it's going to be, hell the way that, everybody sort of has a preconceived notion of hell. And I think it becomes pretty evident that hell is an absurd reality for a lot of these people, that it is not what they believed, and that's part of what makes it into hell, right? The things that you don't think are going to matter to you start to matter, right? This idea that you can no longer look away, right, from your life, creates the absurdity, right? That maybe there are no answers to the questions about why we are, in hell. And so, I think it's important to sort of consider all of that and to start thinking about the different characters and about the way that they operate. What I'm going to do this week, this video is going up right Tuesday ish, and I will put up some additional videos on Thursday talking about the individual members of this group, and we're going to look at them from both a an absurdist point of view and also an existential point of view. How would these two philosophies evaluate the way that these two um, the way that these characters are operating, right? And the way that they sort of and the basic storyline, right? How would an existentialist evaluate this basic storyline? How would an absurdist evaluate this storyline? Um, are there winners? Are there losers? Is change possible, right? I'd like you to, as you are reading this, right, really consider um, all of those questions, right? How do we evaluate these characters from both philosophical points of view? How do we evaluate the storyline from both philosophical points of view, right? Is change possible in an afterlife like this? Is this more of a Dickens, a tale of, Christmas past, future, right, present, that, oh, we get a chance now to sort of reevaluate our lives and, Merry Christmas, to all? Or is this really a way of saying that this is the way Sartre sort of evaluates all of existence, right? When we're awake as well, that we are sort of among the people who can make hell happen for us, right? Or that we ourselves, right, create our own hells because of the people around us, right? So we're going to think about that for um, Thursday ish, right? But I would like you, right, to really consider the discussion question, to really consider, your response to that. This week is going to be sort of you got to respond to the discussion this week, because at this point, right, we are going to be heading into our midterm very soon, and it's going to be important to sort of have an idea about where you are with all of this. Do you feel good about your understanding so far, or are you still sort of struggling to sort of keep up and figure out what's what, right? So there you go. I will see you likely, right, on Thursday if you're watching this today, on Tuesday, or, right, I'll see you in a moment if you're watching this on Thursday. So